A famous YouTuber enters an abandoned house for a live stream, but he never comes out. His last words? "It's not just a ghost. It's something worse." And then he vanishes. What really happened that night? Watch till the end, if you dare. Jack Miller was no stranger to fear. In fact, he had built his entire career around it. His YouTube channel, Ghost Trackers, had exploded in popularity over the past year, gaining millions of subscribers who eagerly awaited his late-night adventures into the unknown. Unlike other paranormal vloggers, Jack didn't fake his reactions or rely on cheap jump scares. He believed in real fear, the kind that made your skin crawl, the kind that made you question what was lurking just beyond your line of sight. Jack had explored abandoned asylums, forgotten graveyards, and even an old hospital rumored to be haunted by the spirits of the dead. Some of his experiences had been terrifying, but nothing had ever truly shaken him. He had a rule: never let the fear win. His audience loved his fearless approach, watching as he navigated dark hallways and whispered into the void, "Is eighth me?" His recent videos had been doing well, but Jack wanted something bigger. He needed a location that would truly test his limits, something that would make his viewers' blood run cold. He had no idea that such a place was about to find him. It arrived in his inbox late one night. The subject line was simple: "The Holloway House awaits you." Jack clicked it without hesitation. The message was short, but unsettling. "Jack, I've been following your videos. You're good, but you've never faced real terror. There's an old house in Kentucky, deep in the woods. Locals refuse to go near it. The last person who tried to stay overnight was never seen again. If you think you're brave, go there. Midnight, alone. You'll find the house at the end of Holloway Road. Come if you dare." There was no name, no signature, no way to reply. Jack frowned, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. He quickly searched Holloway House, Kentucky. Nothing. No urban legends, no news reports, no records at all. That in itself was odd. His first instinct was that it was a hoax, but something about the message intrigued him. The sender knew him, knew his channel, and the phrasing "never faced real terror" felt like a direct challenge. Jack's eyes flickered to the clock. 11:47 p.m. He could be on the road by morning. The more he thought about it, the more it excited him. If this house was truly abandoned and unknown, he would be the first to document it. The YouTuber who conquered the most haunted house in America. He could already see the title. Jack pulled out his camera and started recording. His followers needed to know what was coming. "Alright guys, I just got something crazy in my inbox. Some anonymous tipster sent me a location. An abandoned house in the middle of nowhere. No records, no history. Just whispers of disappearances. You already know I'm going." He grinned at the lens. "Midnight, alone. Let's see if this place lives up to the legend." He spent the next hour packing his gear, his high-quality night vision camera, a flashlight, extra batteries, and a digital recorder for capturing EVPs, electronic voice phenomena. He also packed a small pocket knife, not for ghosts, but in case any trespassers or wild animals were lurking around. As he zipped up his backpack, a thrill ran through him. This was going to be his biggest video yet. Jack had no idea that it would also be his last. Jack had driven through lonely roads before, but this was different. The path leading to the Holloway house was barely a road, just a narrow strip of dirt cutting through miles of dense, towering trees. His headlights barely penetrated the darkness, the surrounding woods swallowing the light. No houses, no streetlights, no signs of civilization. His GPS had lost signal 10 minutes ago. He was relying on the crude directions from the email. Take the old county road past the abandoned gas station. Turn left at the fallen tree. Keep driving until you see the house. You'll know it when you do. Jack had almost laughed when he first read it. Now, driving alone in the middle of nowhere, it felt less like a joke and more like a warning. The road twisted sharply, and suddenly, the trees opened up. There it was. The Holloway house stood at the end of the road like a rotting corpse. A massive Victorian structure. Its towering frame loomed over the clearing, skeletal and broken. The house was ancient, 3 stories tall, with a steep, slanted roof and shattered windows like empty, watching eyes. Vines crawled up the wooden walls, strangling the house like it was trying to drag it back into the earth. The wraparound porch sagged, its railings splintered and warped from decades of neglect. But what unsettled Jack the most were the markings on the front door. Strange symbols, faded red, smeared across the wood. At first, he thought it was graffiti, but as he stepped out of the car and got closer, he realized it looked like they had been drawn with blood. A gust of wind blew through the trees, and Jack felt it immediately. The air was wrong here, too still, too thick. The temperature had dropped noticeably, a clammy chill wrapping around him like unseen fingers. His camera, strapped to his chest, flickered. Jack glanced down at the screen. A brief static glitch. He frowned. Equipment failure this early? That was never a good sign. Still, he pushed forward. He had filmed in unsettling places before. The mind played tricks when fear crept in. But as he approached the house, his gut tightened. This wasn't just an abandoned building. This place was waiting for him. Jack shut his car door, the sound echoing unnaturally in the silence. That was the first thing that felt off. There were no night sounds, no chirping crickets, no rustling leaves, not even the distant hoot of an owl. Just dead, suffocating quiet. He adjusted his camera, making sure it was recording. "All right, guys," he whispered, his voice barely above a murmur. "I just got here, and something already feels off. There's this weird silence, like the whole forest is holding its breath." As he stepped forward, his foot crunched on something brittle. Jack glanced down. Bones, tiny ones, scattered across the dirt. Birds, maybe? He wasn't sure, but they were everywhere, like something had been feasting here. He swallowed hard but kept moving. The house loomed larger as he neared, its broken windows reflecting nothing but darkness. Then, out of the corner of his eye, he saw it. A light, faint, flickering, coming from an upstairs window. Jack froze. That's impossible. The email had said the house had been abandoned for decades. There was no electricity here, no reason for a light to be on. He lifted his camera and zoomed in. Nothing. The window was empty now. A trick of his eyes? Maybe. But his instincts screamed otherwise. His fingers hovered over the camera's zoom button when... static. The screen on his chest-mounted camera glitched again, the image distorting for a second before cutting back to normal. Jack exhaled sharply, shaking his head. "Damn batteries," he muttered. He had extra, but this wasn't a good start. Still, he wasn't about to turn back. Not yet. Steeling himself, he took a deep breath, stepped onto the rotting porch, and reached for the door. It was already open, just enough to let him inside, as if it had been waiting for him. Jack hesitated at the threshold, his fingers brushing against the rough, splintered wood of the door. The gap was just wide enough for him to squeeze through, but he hadn't touched it yet. Someone or something had left it open. He lifted his camera, angling it towards the darkness beyond. "All right, guys, I haven't even stepped inside yet, and this place is already creeping me out. The front door? It's open, just like it's been expecting me." His voice sounded unnaturally loud in the silent night. With a slow, steadying breath, he pushed the door open and stepped inside. The air hit him first, thick, damp, and carrying the scent of rot and something metallic. Blood? Rushed. He wasn't sure, but the smell clung to his nostrils, making his stomach twist. The beam of his flashlight cut through the dark, revealing the grand interior. The house was massive. A sweeping staircase stood in the center of the foyer, its wooden steps warped and broken in places. Above it, a chandelier hung precariously, its crystals covered in layers of dust and cobwebs. Faded wallpaper peeled from the walls, curling like dead skin. Old paintings lined the hallway, portraits of a family, their faces blurred with time. Jack turned the camera toward the artwork. That's when he noticed it. The faces. Every single portrait had the same unsettling detail. Their eyes were completely blackened out. "Okay, that's freaky," Jack whispered, keeping his voice low. Then something moved at the top of the stairs. A shadow. Quick, fleeting. Jack's pulse spiked. He swung his flashlight up, nothing. Just dust floating in the beam. But for a split second, he could have sworn he saw someone standing there, watching him. He checked his camera screen. The red light blinked, signaling it was still recording. His live stream was rolling. If anything happened, his viewers would see it too. His earpiece crackled. The chat was buzzing. User _243. "Dude, something moved upstairs. Ghost Hunter 99. Bro, get out now. Midnight Watcher. You're not alone in there." Jack licked his lips, forcing a smirk. "You guys saw that too, huh?" he muttered. His heart was hammering, but he wasn't about to back out. Not yet. If something was in this house, he was going to find it. Slowly, cautiously, he moved forward, and behind him, the front door creaked shut. The heavy thud of the front door slamming shut sent a jolt through Jack's body. He spun around, his flashlight slicing through the darkness. The door was closed. He hadn't touched it. A sharp chill ran down his spine, but he forced himself to breathe. "It's just the wind," he told himself. Or maybe the house settling. Still, his fingers felt clammy around the flashlight as he turned back toward the hallway. He had been in dozens of haunted places before, but something about this house felt different, wrong. Jack aimed his camera toward the eerie portraits lining the walls. The same family stared back at him. Mother, father, 2 children. But their expressions seemed unnatural. The faces were still faded, still covered in grime, but something was off. Jack could have sworn their mouths were closed when he first walked in. Now, some of them were grinning. His stomach tightened. He stepped closer, zooming in with his camera. "Okay, guys, I think the pictures just changed." His voice was quieter now, barely above a whisper. I swear they weren't smiling before. The chat was exploding again. Dark Soul 99. "Dude, I saw it move." Spectre Hunter. "That's some real haunted house *T. Night Terror 25. "Jack, leave. Now." He exhaled shakily. "Let's just keep moving." As he turned away from the paintings, his flashlight beam landed on something glinting in the hallway. A massive mirror stood against the far wall, its frame ornate but covered in dust. Jack stepped closer, raising his camera to capture the reflection. That's when he saw it. His reflection was wrong. At first glance, everything seemed normal. His dark hoodie, his camera, the dim glow of his flashlight. But then he noticed something his brain struggled to process. The reflection of the hallway behind him wasn't the same as the actual hallway. In the mirror, the walls were pristine.
No peeling wallpaper. No dust.
The chandelier above was gleaming, lit by dozens of candles. It looked like a different time, a different version of the house. And then, something moved in the reflection. Jack's blood ran cold. A figure stood at the far end of the hallway in the mirror. Tall, shadowy, watching. His breath hitched. He spun around, shining his flashlight where the figure should have been. Nothing. Heart pounding, he turned back to the mirror. The figure was still there, but now it was closer, and it was smiling. Jack stumbled back, nearly dropping his camera. The chat was going insane. Haunted by shadows. IT moved again. Shadow Seeker. BRO, it's coming toward you. Jack's hands trembled. He had faced eerie things before, but this felt real. He turned off the flashlight for a split second, then clicked it back on. The mirror was empty. The figure was gone. Jack let out a shaky breath, wiping sweat from his forehead. Okay, guys, That was seriously freaky. But I need to see more. That's when something small and round rolled across the floor behind him. A child's toy. Jack froze. A red rubber ball stopped at his feet, like it had been thrown to him. And from somewhere in the house, a faint voice giggled. A child's giggle. But it didn't sound human. It sounded distorted, twisted, like something was pretending to be a child. And it was close. Jack's breath hitched. The red ball sat motionless at his feet, but it felt wrong, like an offering from something unseen. His camera caught every second, but his chat was eerily silent now. No one was spamming, no one was shouting for him to leave. Just a strange stillness, as if his viewers were holding their breath, waiting. Then the giggle came again. Soft, faint, not quite human. It echoed from deeper inside the house, twisting through the air like a whispering wind. But the distortion in its tone made Jack's skin prickle. This wasn't a child's voice. It was something mimicking a child. He swallowed hard, adjusting his grip on the flashlight. All right, guys, I don't like this. That laugh, that wasn't normal. The chat started moving again. Haunted Eyes 23. That didn't sound like a kid. Paranormal Watch. Jack, get the hell out, bro. Void Seeker. It's leading you deeper in. Don't follow. But Jack didn't move. His heart pounded as he listened. The silence stretched, the house swallowing all sound again. But then, thump, a single footstep from upstairs. Jack's stomach tightened. Thump, thump, two more. Slow, deliberate. The wooden boards above creaked under the weight of something heavy. His fingers hovered over the zoom button of his camera, but part of him was afraid to look. His audience was already reacting. Midnight shadows? Someone's up there. Ghost Hunter 54. Jack, run. WTF was that? Watcher in the dark. Don't go upstairs. Please don't. Jack clenched his jaw. He had come here expecting to find something terrifying, and now that he had, he wasn't about to run. He took a step forward. Then crash. Somewhere in the house, a door slammed shut violently. The sound rattled the walls, echoing through the corridors like a gunshot. Jack's pulse skyrocketed. Came from the study, he realized. The room to his left. He turned his flashlight toward the doorway. The door had been slightly open when he entered. Now it was shut. A gust of ice-cold air brushed past him, carried a whisper, a single word, barely audible but unmistakable. Leave. Jack's blood turned to ice. His chat exploded. Nocturnal terror. Did anyone else hear that? Fear the unknown. IT said leave. Silent Watcher. Jack, you need to go. Now. Jack exhaled shakily, gripping his flashlight tighter. His fingers were trembling, but he couldn't stop now. He had to see what was inside that study. Slowly, he reached for the doorknob, and the moment his fingers touched the wood, the whispers grew louder. Jack hesitated, his fingers brushing against the cold brass doorknob. The air felt thicker now, like the house itself was holding its breath. The whispers had stopped, but the silence, it was worse. He swallowed hard. All right, guys, I'm about to open the door to the study. If anything happens, you're seeing it live. The chat scrolled rapidly. Dark Watcher, don't open it. Haunted Soul 99, I have a bad feeling about this. Shadow Seeker, something is in there. I swear I saw movement. Jack's heart hammered in his chest. He gripped the knob, twisted. Click. The door swung open on its own. Jack jumped back, flashlight shaking in his grip. What the hell? He gasped. The door creaked as it slowly, deliberately opened, revealing a pitch-black study beyond. His camera picked up the details first. Bookshelves lined the walls, their contents scattered across the floor. An old wooden desk stood in the center of the room, covered in a thick layer of dust. And sitting on the desk was a single, untouched object. A diary. Jack hesitated. Guys, There's a book in here. It looks old, but it's not covered in dust like everything else. The chat was blowing up. Ghostly presence. It's a trap, Jack. Get out. Midnight creep. That book was waiting for you. Lost in the dark. Check it, but be careful. Jack exhaled shakily and stepped inside. The air was freezing. The further he walked in, the stronger the scent of mildew and something metallic became. He reached the desk and slowly picked up the diary. Its leather cover was cracked, its pages yellowed with age. On the front, a name was barely visible in faded ink. Eleanor Wren. Who the hell is Eleanor Wren? Jack murmured, flipping open the first page. The handwriting was shaky, uneven. He squinted at the words. I see them at night, watching, whispering. They know I can hear them. They won't let me leave. Jack's stomach twisted. The floorboards behind him creaked. He froze. Hello? He whispered, barely turning his head. Nothing, just darkness. Then, the door slammed shut. The whispering returned. Louder this time. Closer. Jack's breath hitched. He spun around, flashlight beam darting across the room. Empty. But then he noticed something. The diary was still open, but the page had changed. There was new writing, and it wasn't in faded ink. It was fresh, and it said his name. Jack Miller, you shouldn't have come. A shadow moved in the corner of the room. Jack barely had time to react before the light flickered and went out. The moment Jack's flashlight flickered out, the room plunged into complete darkness. His breath came fast and shallow, his pulse pounding in his ears. His fingers fumbled for the flashlight switch. Come on, come on. A click. Nothing. The chat was going insane. Nocturnal Watcher. Jack, what happened? Ghost Hunter 47. Why did the light go out? Silent screams. There's something in there with you. Jack swallowed hard, his hands slick with sweat. He reached for his phone screen, using the dim glow to illuminate the space around him. That's when he heard it. Breathing. Slow. Deep. Right behind him. Jack's entire body went rigid. He wasn't alone. He wanted to turn, to look, but a cold voice inside his mind screamed, "Don't." His phone screen glitched. The image flickered with static, distorting his reflection on the dark surface of the desk. For a fraction of a second, he thought he saw a tall figure, standing inches behind him. Then the whispering started. Low, many voices speaking at once. Some fast, some slow, overlapping in a sickening, unnatural murmur. Jack clenched his jaw. He had to move, ignoring the ice-cold fear clawing at his chest. He took a slow step forward, his sneaker brushing against the diary. The moment he did, the whispers stopped. Silence. The presence behind him was still there, watching, waiting. Jack sucked in a breath, and then a hand clamped onto his shoulder. As cold. Fingers too long. Jack screamed. His flashlight suddenly blazed back to life. He spun around, heart hammering. No one was there, but the study door was wide open. The house had let him go. For now. Guys! Jack panted into the camera, his face pale and damp with sweat. I think something just touched me. The chat was a blur. His viewers had seen everything. Watcher in the dark. Your camera glitched. There was a shadow behind you. Nightmare eyes. I saw the hand. Leave now, Jack. Get out of that house now. Jack swallowed hard, gripping his flashlight like a lifeline. He wasn't done yet, because the whispers had said one thing very clearly. You shouldn't have come. And now he needed to know why. Jack's entire body was trembling, but he forced himself to keep moving. He stepped out of the study, back into the long, shadowed hallway. The air felt heavier now, like the house was breathing around him. His chat was still exploding. Dark Spectre 99. Jack, something doesn't want you here. Fear the void. You need to leave before it gets worse. Ghost Hunter 47. There's still more to find. Keep going. Jack's fingers tightened around his flashlight. His instincts screamed at him to get out, but his gut told him he was close to something bigger. Then he saw it. At the far end of the hallway, a door he hadn't noticed before. It was slightly open, revealing a staircase leading down into darkness. A basement. Jack's mouth went dry. "Oh, hell no," he whispered. The chat erupted. Shadow Seeker, do not go into the basement. Nocturnal Watcher, that's always where things go wrong. Silent Screams, you have to. That's where the truth is. Jack took a deep breath. Alright guys, I'm going down. Step by step, he descended. The deeper he went, the colder it got. The air was damp, thick with the stench of rot and something metallic. Blood. He swallowed hard and aimed his flashlight forward. The light cut through the darkness, revealing a small, cluttered room. Old newspaper clippings covered the walls. Rusted chains hung from the ceiling. The dirt floor was uneven, like something had been buried there. Jack's heart pounded as he stepped closer, his camera zooming in. He scanned the yellowed clippings, his breath hitching as he read the headlines. Missing children continue to disappear in Kentucky town. Local family vanishes without a trace. Only daughter left behind. Mysterious house linked to unexplained disappearances. Jack's stomach twisted. Oh my God. This house is connected to all of this? Then he saw it, the last newspaper clipping. It was newer than the others, and it had a name. Eleanor Wren, sole survivor of the Wren family, found in a catatonic state. Last words before disappearing again. They're still in the house. Jack's hands went clammy. Eleanor, the name from the diary. That's when his flashlight flickered. The dirt beneath his feet shifted. Something moved, and then a voice whispered right next to his ear. You found us. The light went out, and something grabbed his ankle. Jack let out a choked scream as something ice-cold clamped around his ankle. It wasn't a hand. It felt bonier, sharper, inhuman. His flashlight flickered violently as he stumbled backward, kicking wildly. The dirt beneath him shifted again, as if something was trying to crawl out. His camera was still rolling. The chat was a chaotic mess. Dark Spectre 99. WTF is that? Ghost Watcher 47. Something just moved under the floor. Shadow Seeker. Jack. Run. Get out now. Jack's breathing was ragged as he scrambled away. His flashlight's beam flickered over the ground, and then he saw it. The dirt was rising, like something buried beneath was trying to force its way out. Then a hand broke through the surface. Pale, rotting, too long, too thin, clawed at the air, reaching. Jack let out a strangled gasp, pushing himself up just as another hand erupted from the ground, and then another, and another. The whispering returned. Not just one voice, dozens, maybe hundreds. We are still here. Jack's flashlight flickered, and in that brief burst of light, he saw it. A shadowy figure standing in the corner of the basement. It was tall, unnaturally tall. Its limbs were twisted, its body nothing but shifting darkness. Its face was hollow, empty sockets where eyes should have been. And yet, Jack knew it was staring at him. Then it spoke, not with a voice, inside his head. You belong to us now. The basement door slammed shut. Jack screamed. His camera glitched, the live feed breaking into static. The last thing his viewers saw was his terrified face, before the screen went completely black. And then, silence. The live stream abruptly cut off. One moment, Jack's panicked voice filled the chat, and the next, nothing. The screen turned black. His audience sat in stunned silence, waiting for a few long seconds, hoping for a technical glitch. But nothing happened. Jack had vanished, as if he had been swallowed by the darkness itself. His phone, his camera, all his equipment remained behind. His car was still parked outside. His belongings were untouched. But Jack? There was no trace of him. The chat exploded in confusion and panic. Dark Spectre 99. What just happened? Where did Jack go? Silent screams. He can't just disappear like that. This isn't normal. Watcher in the dark. Call the police. Call someone. Within hours, police were notified. Fans flooded social media demanding answers. Jack's viewers began reaching out, desperate for any clues about what had happened in that house. The authorities arrived at the abandoned mansion. The police scoured the grounds, the house, every corner of the property. They found no signs of struggle, no evidence of Jack being forcibly taken. His car sat untouched in the driveway, his camera equipment neatly packed away beside it. Everything was in its place, but Jack himself, gone. The officers found the basement door locked from the inside, with no way for Jack to have left. They opened it, only to be greeted by the same eerie silence that had plagued Jack since he entered. The house gave no answers, and Jack had disappeared. His social media was flooded with questions. Fans begged for any information, but the police were as baffled as anyone. The only evidence that remained was the footage. They recovered his last recording, distorted and corrupted. Faint whispers echoed throughout the file, almost inaudible over the static. A few seconds in, the camera's image was reduced to nothing but a blur of movement and shadow. But, in the final moments, just before the screen went black, a chilling image flashed across the screen. Jack was dragged into the darkness. By nothing. No visible force, no attacker. Just a void that seemed to consume him. The police were unable to explain it. As far as anyone could tell, Jack Miller had simply vanished without a trace. And the haunting whispers still lingered in the files. It's not just a ghost. It's something worse. Days passed. The search for Jack Miller continued. But with each passing day, the hope of finding him alive grew slimmer. The authorities, baffled by the case, had no leads. No one knew where to look, and there were no signs of foul play. But then, the police received a disturbing piece of evidence. The footage from Jack's last stream. The authorities initially tried to analyze the footage in hopes of finding something that could explain his disappearance. The file was corrupted in places, but after some careful work, they managed to recover a few key moments. What they saw chilled them to the core. In the final seconds of the live stream, the camera had captured strange, unsettling phenomena. For the first few minutes of the recovered footage, there was only static. The distorted whispers were barely audible, but they were unmistakable, like hundreds of voices speaking in an incomprehensible language, layered on top of one another. The footage cut to black, and for a long moment there was nothing. Then, a shadowy figure appeared, standing still in the far corner of the basement. Its form was almost invisible at first, like a trick of the light. But as the camera zoomed in, its outline became clearer. It was the same figure Jack had seen earlier, the one that had whispered in his mind. Tall, distorted, with hollow eyes and a form that seemed to shift and flicker in the dark. Then the whisper stopped, and for a moment, the basement was dead silent. But that silence didn't last long. Out of nowhere, Jack's camera started to shake violently, as if something was pulling it from his hand. The audio cut out completely, replaced by a low groaning sound, like the earth itself was screaming. In the final moments of the footage, the camera tilted upward, and what could be seen next was a blur of fast-moving shadows. Jack's voice was audible, but it was no longer clear, muffled, like he was drowning. It's not just a ghost. The camera shook again, and then the screen went black. The footage ended, leaving the police with a sense of utter confusion and dread. They analyzed the video in an attempt to find any rational explanation, but they found nothing. There were no signs of tampering, no special effects. It was as if the footage was a glimpse into something that shouldn't exist, something that was never meant to be seen. Despite the chilling nature of the footage, the authorities didn't release it to the public at first. But when they did, it quickly spread across the internet. Jack's viewers, desperate for answers, watched the video over and over again, trying to make sense of what had happened to their favorite vlogger. Some believed it was a hoax, a perfectly executed act to boost Jack's fame. Others were convinced that Jack had discovered something real, something that had claimed him, something far beyond human understanding. But no matter how much they watched, no one could explain what had happened in that basement. And then the video was deleted, without explanation. The footage was wiped from every platform, leaving only rumors and whispers in its wake. As the years passed, Jack Miller's disappearance became an urban legend, talked about only in hushed voices. Locals claimed that on stormy nights, you could still hear screams coming from the abandoned house. Jack's screams. The house, they said, was never empty. It was still home to whatever force had taken Jack. And that force, whatever it was, waited for the next person foolish enough to seek out the truth. But the real horror, the true terror, came in the words Jack had uttered in his final moments. It's not just a ghost. It's something worse. Years passed, but the mystery surrounding Jack Miller's disappearance never truly faded. It lingered like a ghost over the small town in Kentucky where the abandoned house stood, its once grand structure now even more decayed and forgotten. The house, however, still held its terrible secret. Locals spoke of it only in whispers, eyes darting nervously when the subject was broached. The children dared each other to get close to the house, but no one ever went inside. The few who did spoke of a constant, unsettling presence that seemed to cling to the place. The air was thick, like the house was suffocating under the weight of something ancient and dark. It wasn't long before Jack's story became more than just an unsolved mystery. It became an urban legend. Those who knew of the house, whether through the chilling footage or the rumors passed down from generation to generation, told their own version of Jack's story. Some said that Jack's disappearance wasn't the end, that he was still there, lost in the house, forever part of the twisted force that had claimed him. Others claimed that the house had been abandoned by the evil that once resided within it, leaving nothing but its lingering echoes. But none of these stories were true. No one ever found out what really happened to Jack. The police gave up their investigation long ago, and the footage, the evidence, the questions, all of it was swallowed by time. It was as if Jack had never existed in the first place. But the whispers remained. The locals knew deep down that the house was still alive, that it waited. And in the years following Jack's disappearance, the area saw an unsettling uptick in mysterious events. The occasional disappearance of animals, strange figures spotted lurking in the woods, unexplained noises that echoed through the trees at night. And every so often, someone would post an old mysterious video on social media, claiming to have discovered the footage of Jack's final moments or showing strange events at the house. But these videos always ended up deleted. The same thing had happened to Jack's stream. The government had tried to cover up the original footage, but some still whispered that it still existed, somewhere, kept hidden by those who had seen the truth and couldn't unsee it. Still, the house remained as it had always been, silent and empty on the outside, but haunted on the inside. Locals who lived nearby still claimed to hear screams on windy nights, screams that sounded far too human, too filled with terror. And occasionally, a passing car would slow near the house, only for its driver to feel an icy chill sweep over them and suddenly drive off, never looking back. The case of Jack Miller became the stuff of nightmares, the tale retold around campfires, on internet forums, and in the dark corners of the web. It became a story of caution, a warning to those who sought the truth too eagerly, to those who thought they could handle the dark corners of the world. Jack Miller's name was never truly forgotten, though. It lived on in the minds of those who had once followed him, who still wondered what had really happened that fateful night. Was it truly paranormal? Or had Jack uncovered something that the world wasn't meant to see? And as for the house, it was said that if you stood just outside its crumbling walls at midnight, You could still hear the sound of a live stream playing faintly in the distance, a voice barely audible over the static. The last words of Jack Miller, "It's not just a ghost, it's something worse." And then the whispers, always the whispers. Jack Miller's story remains a mystery, and there are countless more terrifying tales waiting to be uncovered. If you love chilling horror stories, make sure to subscribe to Horror Horizon, where darkness has no end. Stay scared,